Have you looked at Matter's Instagram page?
Yeah, boo.
Isn't it just amazing?
It is. I'm
smitten.
Deep diving.
Yeah.
I was looking at Material Atlas just now.
It's just even the book, like the book in person, like it's such an amazing piece of literature to exist. I have so many questions.
Looks like it. I'm excited. Why are you laughing?
Because you said it looks like it now, as in it's obvious.
No, it is.
I just also realized the importance of photography.
Because of the photos on the page.
Like, as in, I think it's so interesting that sometimes some essences of some things for some people may only come through when they see it through like the lens of the camera. Like, if you put it to them in person like that, they may just be like, yeah, what? These are just a couple of vases. But then when you take a picture, sometimes they now get to see, oh, I feel something, which is interesting.
Yeah. English.
How?
That's just one way of language generally.
Okay.
Expression that seems to take up so much space.
I get it.
There's some nice design.
Yeah, it is.
Looks like they use Matter.js, which is cool. It's like a library for making things feel tactile.
On their website?
Yeah, on their website. These shapes, like, they feel tactile even though they're in 2D.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. That's what I was talking about, the texture of the images that I'm seeing. They're like, it always feels like something that is more than the screen. Like, it comes out, it really respects the material that is being presented, like, on a digital thing, which is why I'm obsessed with it. Hi, really Seetal. Cool. We're just singing your praises in your absence.
Hi. Hi.
How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
Oh, I'm gobsmacked. I'm gobsmacked.
Yeah,
I'm just diving into the matter of matter.
Oh, lovely. You're going in already.
Overwhelmed is my own word, which I feel like is gobsmacked cousin.
What was that, sorry?
I said overwhelmed is my own word, which I feel
is stop it now.
Like, it's amazing. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah, it is. I'm almost at a loss for where to begin, so I just want to write.
I know we can begin in a very sort of casual manner. Honestly, it's just a chat.
It is just a chat, but I think more than, it's not even like, I think it's just like sitting with the feelings that our bodies have been shifted into. Like, it's almost like we're not we're so speechless because we're immersed in what you've put us into. Like, you've put us into the spirits and the lives of these materials. Now we're so in there that we need like a moment to be like, wow, this whole world, we know it exists in that way, but it's so nice when we find other human beings who are working hard to like tell us it exists in that way.
Yeah, it's simply reminding people that we've always kind of lived that way, honestly. And I'm just simply presenting it in a way where it feels relatable. And so much of it is connected to a very spiritual way of being, but actually it's also very logical and practical. So I don't know, I feel like it's a no-brainer. I'm like, how can we think that we are the most dominant species on this planet when actually, so many beings around us are telling us and speaking to us actually in a different language to what we're perhaps familiar with on a human-to-human level. But so much of it is about listening and observing and awareness, I think.
Yeah.
I guess it's consciousness to the ultimate degree, but like it's also just being present. I really like this idea of an embodied intelligence somehow, and rather than a language of speaking or writing. I think there's so much that we ignore sometimes when it comes to other forms of languages. And I'm talking about things like intuition or instinctive qualities to like your gut feeling,
Yeah.
and also like the listening, the observing, and all of that's kind of interlinked, obviously. But then it comes to scent, how does something smell? How does something taste? So there's like so many other ways of like talking to one another. Really. And that's a conversation in itself.
Laughing because just before you joined the call, Seetal, Sheila and I were on the Matter website and talking about the shapes on the home and how I commented that they feel very tactile, even though it's it's digital and it's 2D. It feels like I'm still holding them. And Sheila was actually, before I said that, Sheila was commenting about photography and how it's a language unto itself. The way you can sort of like capture images and regard them through photography is a language unto itself. And then we started talking about like language and like how it's just put on this pedestal when they're all communication and knowing. So just hearing you say that is like you weren't even there, but you were,
But I think that's what I was saying about what was so amazing about what like you guys were doing is that it always feels like what's nice is that it feels good to have someone who feels like they're on the same wheel of cognition they're on. So no matter at what point I'm understanding something, I can then still connect with you because either you've been there or you're just about to get there. So it's never unintelligible. Like it's always either pushing you further or like taking you back into somewhere that like you miss and you recognize. And I really like that's communication, that's understanding. And I was just reading Audre Lorde's essay on uses of the erotic, and there's a part where she says, I'm looking for it to read it to you. There's a part where she's just talking about how the erotic is really about connection. Like she says, the erotic functions for me in several ways. And the first is in providing the power which comes from sharing deeply any pursuits with another person. The sharing of joy, whether physical, emotional, psychic, or intellectual, forms a bridge between the sharers, which can be the basis for understanding much of what is not shared between them and lessens the threat of their difference. And why I love that so much is because when we think about the erotic as something that is always kind of like corrupt, there's something so beautiful and innocent about this version of eroticism that's like, no, actually what's erotic is just sharing with you. Like when two kids will go to a park and then one person will offer their red toy and the other person would offer their blue toy. Like that's the seed of eroticism and what it should be, which is opposite to like the pornographic. That's also what she's saying, is that the pornographic is actually not the erotic. It's actually the abuse of like a signaling. It's like taking the shell of something and then making that the essence of the thing. But it's wrong. Like this. And I think even that kind of thing or that kind of like image is only made clearer by materials. I was reading your day's interview, and one thing I wanted to ask is, do you see materials the same way that we're looking at language, right, as a metaphor? And Uzoma and I were saying proverbs are almost putting language into a shape that makes a person's body feel the message being passed. Do you think that you use materials as a metaphor to sort of like communicate something about humanness?
Most definitely. I would describe what I do as humanizing materials. And really, it's getting to know ourselves simply through materials, and I think, and getting to know materials through ourselves. And there's such a common language that we speak to one another because we are constantly surrounded by them. And whether it's our cells in our bodies or skin or bones, or the bed that we're sleeping on, you know, even when we're sleeping, we are in contact and with materials, you know. So we have to kind of form a relationship that's based on care, respect, and actually love. Honestly, everything is connected by love, and I think the erotic is simply that. I think you're so right in saying that it's become pornographic, and I think that's because it's become sexualized, you know.
Right.
And I think that's rather than it being sexual, it's being sexualized. And I think that's a really big difference in between, like, how we want to impose ourselves or kind of our impressions on something. And it's really about changing perspective, and everything is about seeing the world through a different lens, and materials is a way to kind of navigate that, you know. And so I'm providing alternatives of how people can see the world and engage with the world, relate with the world, but really it's starting with ourselves.
I have a question.
Me too.
What do you remember as being the first material to give you an erotic feeling? Eroticism
my
is in
God.
the sense of of a powerful sensation and a connection to something.
Food.
Oh yes. Yes.
I
Food
think,
is great.
yeah, it's cooking has been such a big part of my life, and continues to be. I really have learned so much about the world through food. I started cooking when I was 5, so
Wow.
yeah, very young.
That's early.
Seetal, is everything okay? Why were you cooking for
Hard times, Sheila, hard
I know.
times.
It seems like that's amazing though. That's amazing.
Yeah, it really was. At the time, not so much, but I was like, I learned so much about where ingredients came from, where to buy them, who to buy them from, how to prepare them, how to use every single component of the food and try not to waste anything or have no waste. If there were leftovers, they would be invigorated the following day into an entirely new dish. So there was so much kind of learnings. I think this idea of formal learning and informal learning is how I've kind of bridged my practice together, really. And food has been a really great vehicle for all of that, as well as, like, you know, so much of my value system has come through my informal learnings, through my family upbringing and, you know, values, really, and how they've shaped myself and my own way of being with the world. And that is very a spiritual one, being brought up Hindu, and I guess seeing that we are aligned with the animal world, the plant world, all of these different kingdoms that exist here are something that is being worshipped in Hinduism. And I'm not religious, I would say. I would say I'm spiritual. So I have a deep respect for kind of seeing the world through those eyes as well. So, yeah.
That's great. Thank you. So you said you had a question.
Yeah, but just in response to that, I just think it's so amazing, and also how our child is sort of, it's like they set us up for life. Because just hearing the stories, it's all like, it's so, like, I can see the link between 5-year-old you in the kitchen and, you know, the work you're doing now, and that appreciation for materials, like, it's clear. And I think that's really cool. And also to the distinction between formal and informal learning, also sounds to me like the distinction between, like, I don't know, East and West, or like science and mysticism. And I was listening to something a few days ago. It was a Mantak who's a Taoist spiritual leader, and he was talking about how they've like made certain discoveries at CERN in Switzerland that have validated like things that the Tao has known for hundreds of years. And he was like really excited about it. And the person interviewing him was almost kind of confused, like, so like you're into science, like you like that science has discovered this. And he's like, yeah, like, so now there's like harmony that can exist now. Like it's like we are the better for it. And I feel like that's what is at the root of Sheila and I's practice as like as well. It's like almost trying to bridge, like we talk about being bridges a lot, like bridges between thinking and being. And I think that it's like a very exciting place to be. And so my question is connected to that. What I really, one of the things I really like about your work is how you've like been able to translate it so well to the digital space that we all sort of like inhabit now. And so I just like to hear more about that, especially with like Material Atlas, that project in particular. What is the thinking behind it? Like, why did you choose to present it in? It's almost sort of like an encyclopedia, like a digital encyclopedia of materials, like from the continent. So, like, yeah, that's just very interesting, and I'd like to hear more.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack there. Wow. Okay.
Don't worry, Seetal, we can always have a follow-up on our next podcast called Niggas Ain't Shit. I think that's what we call it. But we can find
I'm down.
They really ain't.
Okay, so I will begin by talking about informal and formal learning, because I think that really will follow through to like how everything else gets executed. So much. Yeah, I think we kind of ignore sometimes value systems when we're kind of thinking about how we engage our working life in the rest of the world, or like even relating to each other. I think work is seen as something that we want to run away from somehow, and actually it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be choreful. It doesn't have to be something that we don't want to do, actually. I think this word work or schooling or learning, you know, all of these ways of thinking that it's compulsory, you know, we're obliged to do these things. And actually, when we align our value systems, it's very philosophical, I guess, in terms of what I'm speaking about here, but it's all connecting our entire self and understanding what we're made of. And what we're made of are these learnings through informality, through formality. And the formal learnings are what we're being taught at school, right? And that's being presented in a way where there's a right and there's a wrong and there's there's no kind of in between somehow, or there's no way of existing in this world between the informal and formal. We're just thinking about it in a very sort of linear way, and also binary, also colonial, you know?
Mm.
It's a very colonial way of learning, and they call it school.
That was so funny.
I just heard you describing that like school of aliens. Aliens are like, yeah, what's going on here? And you're like, yeah, it's colonial learning. We call it school.
It's like, well, actually, we're just learning, you know,
Exactly.
and we're learning about facts, history, how the world is made through geography, you know, like all of these things are really valuable to learn about, and we'll constantly be learning about those, you know, new histories that are being formed all the time. And I think it's just aligning ourselves with how the rest of the world works and not feeling too confined by there is a binary answer for something. Or I think with maths you can be quite creative as well, even though there is a conclusion at the end of it of sorts, right? But for me it's so much about resolutions or providing alternatives, not solutions. So much of being taught is about finding a solution, and we're always being kind of pushed into a direction where we need to find a solution, and that it's kind of a universal solution to solve the world's problems. And we don't even know what the problems are in the first place because we're just seeing it through one lens. And
So,
they have
Seetal,
to.
what's the
Go on.
but
No.
what's the difference between an alternative and a solution?
Sure. So for me, a solution is very fixed, and that's it. You have basically solved an issue, and there's no other solution or alternative way around it. With a solution, you also will incur further problems, right? Because things change, things evolve, we evolve, and new kind of issues are being created because our behaviors change, our needs change, and all sorts of things. So we can't be so fixed in the way that we think.
Yeah.
And a solution is too fixed and rigid, which doesn't actually provide very much because it needs to be more nuanced. And if it's because how can one solution be the answer for the entire world? It just doesn't work because people's needs are different. There's cultural differences, there's climate differences. And with all of these differences, we need to be more accepting of them, which isn't something that a solution is aware of.
Right.
And I think for me, it's like, okay, so what about providing options? What about providing alternatives? Okay, we know that these issues exist, but these are the many ways in which they can be interpreted. And materials can offer those alternatives in many different forms. And materials are incredibly versatile, I would say. And that versatility is providing alternatives. It's like, for example, I use an analogy of like eggs. Eggs can be, so like how to describe a person working with materials and maybe in a design way is thinking of a cook or a chef and how they can work with one ingredient and process it in many different ways. And that processing is quite alchemic. It's like
alchemical.
Yeah. And by processing these ingredients in different ways, whether you're baking it, frying, scrambling, poaching, all of these different processes end up with an entirely different texture and experience. These sensorial qualities that these processes kind of encourage offer you with an entirely different application of sorts. You're like, okay, so this texture is a bit more like softer. It can be softer, it can be slimier, it can be, crumbly even, and all sorts of things like that. And actually, it's just the same ingredient. It's just been processed differently. Mm-hmm. So the example I would use is, or think about, is algae. And algae can be food, fuel, textiles, color, insulation, architecture, so many things. And it's providing alternatives to our lives, really, and the way that we can perhaps live just with one ingredient. And this is really a conversation about potential, actually, because we as human beings are kind of pigeonholing ourselves, or we are being pigeonholed by others when we get asked the question, what do you do for a living? And it's the worst question to ask me, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. It's true. Someone was just tweeting about like how they never really like understand why people take it so personal. And even me, I was like, it's so like, it's such a sensitive thing for people to be asked that. But I also understand definitely that like when a lot of people ask, what do you do for a living? Maybe they expect to hear you solve a problem. Like they expect to hear you give the solution to your life. But it's like, actually, all I have are alternative solutions to this whole fucking mystery of my life.
Yeah, and I'm just like, oh, these are the things that I align with, and also like what I'm interested in. But what I do for a living is this, and this, and this. And I'm like, and it's really hard. I don't blame people for being confused by sometimes what I do, but I present it in a way where I call myself a translator. Not a designer anymore. I mean, I'm still a designer, but really I'm translating. And I think that feels really comforting to me, actually. And also feels like it's never ending. And again, it's not fixed. It feels like there's so many possibilities of trying to understand the many ways of translating, whether it be, and this is all through language and not just the polemical language, or what we're being taught in academia. And for me, it's so much about expression, because as people, that's all we really want to do, is express ourselves and feel comfortable doing so. And that's really a journey towards realizing our potential. And this is the same for materials, because if we think about how many materials we have in the world, there's 160,000 unique materials being manufactured industrially. 160,000? What are we doing with them?
I know. What are we actually doing with them? Have you found out, Seetal?
No, I'm just like, I'm so confused. I'm like, so why are we creating more? Why, on one hand, can we not understand how to work with the ones we already have and what we have available to ourselves?
So do you basically mean, why are we going to Mars?
Yes. What is this about? I don't understand.
Elon, Seetal on the phone.
Can you imagine the conversation with the two of us? Oh my God. I would love this, actually.
I think it needs to happen ASAP. Like, Elon, if you're listening to this podcast, get on a call, please.
Yeah,
It would
please
actually
call
be.
me and we can have a conversation for
It
sure.
would be awesome. Okay, before I even go into that, there's something that has been burning through my brain. So all this stuff, the translation between states, between different states of one material are so interesting because I remember I went to my friend's house and I wanted to drink tea and there was only like Chinese red tea. So I was now like, what is red? As in when I put it in the cup, it kind of felt tea, but it looked red. So I was like, what is red tea? And then as I was researching, I found out that red, green, and black tea are all one leaf, but just oxidized in different time, which then brings me to the topic of time as alchemy, or time almost as the mother or the parent of all material. Because if we're talking about translation, actually, we have to use like the most
Yeah.
constant force or the most constant element in all those different materials is actually time. Like
Yeah.
one of my favorite things to always go back to is how the Sahara wasn't always a desert. Like it was a freaking thriving ocean. And they saw like whales, like they have evidence that even whales used to be or live around there. And then you have this thing that all my life I've only known as a desert. Like it's not even just called the Sahara, it's called the Sahara Desert. But like once before that desert wasn't attached to it. So like I have a quote that I actually want you to respond to. It's Tennessee Williams, and he said, "Time is the longest distance between two places." What do you think about that and the concept of time as a material?
That's beautiful. Do you mind repeating the quotes again for me?
Yes. Time is the longest distance between two places.
Journey. Yeah, I think time is a material, honestly. And it's the immaterial, actually, that we are kind of exposed to, but we kind of think about. So I'll kind of put it into this example, actually. So many materials are being designed for durability, right? And we think that that's way more valuable than designing a material that's actually meant to die quite quickly. And I think this idea of death in the material world is something that we're quite afraid of, actually. And we see less value in something that has a short lifespan. And actually, that shouldn't be the case. Because, for example, like single-use plastic is the primary example of all of this. You know, single-use plastic, say for plastic bottles that we drink from, can live up to 500 plus years. But it's being used in a form that is single-use and disposable. So why are we not using a material that actually has a short life?
Right.
And I think there's this sense of long life or immortality is what we want to be striving for. And I think this idea of a death in the material is seen as something we want to steer away from. Much like human life, right? We want to live as long as possible, and you know, we'll try and get there as in any which way we can. And sometimes it's forced as well. Like most of these materials aren't meant to be designed for durability. There's so many ways we can design materials: durability, modularity, versatility, biodegradability. There's so many ways in which materials can live through different temporalities. And this comes back to translation, it comes back to alternatives, and just showing a different way of accepting them, actually, respecting them for what they actually, the characteristics that they possess. And I think we need to start listening to them more and them telling us what they can do and achieve and what they want to be in life, actually. And
That's actually so funny.
I think that
I'm going to talk to my orange tonight. The questions.
I just got the image of like a dad like asking his child, like, what do you want to be in life? But the child is like plastic.
Right.
Like
Exactly.
Cartoon.
What do you want to be when you grow up? You know, that question.
Yeah.
That's
it's
actually,
true, and that's time.
Exactly.
It takes a really good imagination to believe in time.
Yeah.
Because imagine talking to plastic and being the only person to know that this plastic is actually going to last 500 years. But everybody's like, this person must be crazy to be talking to plastic. But we all know that, like, you can only get to that level, which is actually leading to my question, which has been in my head, is in what kind of emotional, spiritual, and financial state do you have to be to sort of like pay attention to the materials?
a good question.
That is a great question.
Can I
Wow.
add a
You
bit?
stumped me now. So how do I approach this?
No, because I'm just thinking, imagine like, let's say we have a house girl now, and the house girl hasn't, like, she finished formal education, like, I don't know, in secondary school. And for me, that formal education is basically just time that is dedicated to learning. It's not that it's even superior or inferior. It's just that at least you have 8 to 5 p.m. or 8 to 2 p.m. where you can just be focused on learning something, paying attention to your own life and not being responsible for catering to somebody else. So you leave that, and then she comes to this house, and then instead of, like, I don't know, we go downstairs to get something from the kitchen, and then we see her like talking to an orange. We would flip. We would be confused. But I do it somehow. People will be confused, but they're like, it's fine because, well, like, she can still afford to like pay her rent if rent comes, or so there's a certain level of other things around you that need to be shaped in such a way where paying attention to materials isn't the thing to sort of like finally grant you banishment from your community, but it's something that you can still balance your life with.
Are you answering your question?
No, I'm not answering. It's still a question, because I'm just saying, like, how do you guys, maybe if you even take it personally, like, how do you, Seetal, create a state or exist in a state where it's affordable for you to pay attention to material?
I also wanted, when you asked the question initially, and this example that you gave is relevant because this is something I think about a lot with regards, like, with respect to Nigeria, and just certain, like, materially speaking, there's such an imbalance, and so certain things that you can take for granted, that's not necessarily the case for most people, and so yeah, just like I wanted to sort of like add that context to about the question, because I think it's really a thing that speaks to many places, like many parts of the world, not just here.
For sure. So how I would approach this is through play. I don't necessarily think we need to be adding too much to people's lives in terms of like, pressurizing them or making them feel guilty or shameful or any of these things, because actually the way that we can integrate this way of thinking or perception into people's lives is quite simple, honestly. I do it in a way where it's very playful, and all of that is through relationality and providing access. All of this is about access. And, materials has been positioned in an academic and scientific space for the longest time. And so much of that knowledge isn't necessarily accessible to the majority of people who haven't learned those things in school or university or anything like that. So all of this knowledge is very high level of sorts, and the language that they're speaking in these spaces isn't very accessible at all. And you both speak of being bridges. This is exactly it, right? So I'm bridging these worlds, but presenting it in a way which feels relatable. And so much of this is about relationality, honestly, because all of this is there. We just have to show it in a more relatable and accessible way. And that's through language.
Yeah, it's actually through what you're saying is just reaching me spiritually, like in my bones. Cause I was just having a conversation with my sister just this morning, and we're talking about, so someone wrote something about how, like, if Mary, the mother of God, could conceive of Jesus, who is God, then that means that she is God within herself. Like, that has to be the equation. So there's no lesser, like, she's not a container. For you to contain something so powerful, you are in fact a shape of that power. So I was telling my sister, and she was saying, yes, that when she's pregnant, she feels that God is closest to her, because she feels in her she feels that he is like standing right next to her and actually forming the child within her. So if she asks for something, it's most likely to get to him because he's right there, like, because her vision of God is that person. And so I was just thinking, it's funny that I think the experiences we have with things, like with matter, they're all supposed to, like, they're all opening the door to our understanding of who we are. It's like we're taking different buses or different, like, bicycles to the to answer the question or to solve the mystery of who are we and what are we doing here. So for my sister, it could be forming this child in her stomach, but for someone like Abubakar Fofana, it could be like translating leaves to bacteria, to indigo, to dye, to fabric. Like, for the person picking the cotton who's spinning it, it can be like taking that and making it thread. So whatever is almost like available around you, like in an affordable way, is supposed to be, it's like supposed to teach about your strength in yourself. So when people can't, for some reason, they can't afford, they're not even allowed to look around them and accept that, like, what is affordable to them can also be highly technical and be a really good teacher. Like something like how for the longest time we were taught to look down on our food. Like, oh my God, Nigerian food smells bad. It's like, you're not cool. You're supposed to eat burgers and stuff like that. But like, they can turn around them and see a McDonald's like 2 blocks away, and that's next to them, and they can appreciate it. But for us, we look around and see what's next to us, and we hate, like, we're taught to say that this is not what we want. We want McDonald's, which is why when KFC came here, it was such a big deal. But it's like people were going to KFC for Christmas, but like, imagine doing that in America or London. Like, that's already, you understand? Like, you can't afford more. So I don't know. I don't even know what question this lands on. I just wanted to add this to the conversation. Like, what happens when people can't look around them and accept that they have teachers right in front of them?
Can I interject again?
Please, go ahead.
I think kind of related, and also going back to my earlier question around material atlas. When you were speaking, Seetal, so play is one of the materials in the atlas. And just when you were speaking about play, I was reminded of that. And so, yeah, what's my question? I think so I like how it's like, it being in the atlas, it's almost like giving form, and it's almost like tiles, like it's identified as a thing, like a tool, like a technology, as opposed to just like a thing that, sort of happens. I mean, it does happen organically, but what I enjoy about the tactile is that you're giving
language.
Yes, you're like, it's like protocols, like, and that's something that's been very like close to me just in the past few months, thinking about the stuff we're thinking about. It's like protocols can help, language can help with just with the work of reinventing. Like we're talking about shifting from a solution-based mindset to like an alternatives-based mindset. Like protocols can help with that process. And so I guess like I kind of just want to hear more about that, about like identifying play as like a thing, capital letter P. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I can kind of think about it from a perspective of the curriculum I've designed within my practice, because it has a relationship to the atlas, the material atlas, because it really began with a workshop. Actually, I don't even like that word, honestly. A session with 10 creatives from 10 different countries in sub-Saharan Africa. And this was hosted with the British Council in the UK and also Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And I was lucky, Mata was lucky enough to be able to like host a whole day session with these wonderful people. And I started off with a material personality quiz that we've designed. And it's really to get them to see themselves through materials and the material qualities they possess. And they get to see themselves through, I guess, a written language first. So the qualities were framed around adjectives or verbs rather than nouns, because I didn't want them to be perceived as plastic or metal or glass or, because I wanted them to see themselves as possessing qualities around I'm methodical, I'm empathetic, I'm caring, and all of these other qualities that human beings also possess as well as material.
Is it like, if I identify, do you identify as a thing first and then move to identifying as qualities, or how does the process work?
No, they're simply starting off with qualities, and you get asked a number of questions, and they're framed around whether you have an abundance mindset or scarcity mindset, all of these different things. And there's all the questions are very playful. So one of them is like, are you a house cat or a chameleon? Or do you think like fungus or eucalyptus or nettle? Sorry, one of them. But anyway.
What kind of mindset does cactus have? A scarcity mindset or an abundance mindset?
Definitely an abundance mindset.
It was, sorry, which one? Sorry.
Cactus.
Oh, I think I said, what did I say? Fungus or...
No, about cactus generally, because when you ask that question about mindsets, I just thought, it's so true that some materials have a scarcity mindset and some have abundance. Like cactus to me just feels so rigid. It's like I'm not breaking down my walls for anybody.
Right.
I will be self-sufficient to the day that I die, which is never.
So you could see it as abundance somehow, but then it's also a scarcity mindset, because if it's providing itself with so much, there's an abundance in that, but it perhaps is in a selfish manner, but not at the same time.
It's true.
Yeah, but then it's also providing life to other things in
being itself, it's providing life to others. Amazing. Yeah. Thank you. You changed my mind about cactus, because I was like, these people need to that they need help. Why are they so proud?
Right. But then it's almost a lesson in thinking, okay, so what are the qualities the cactus possesses which I can relate to and maybe that I would like in my life, and be like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To be cactus, to learn from cactus.
No, at all.
You know what this just reminded me of? I read a Brain Pickings essay, and they were talking about this exercise that her friend did. Her friend's a teacher, and so she asked her students to identify the worst insect, or I think animal, like the animal they like the least, and to spend like a whole semester learning every single thing they could learn about that animal. And like I think every week, like each week, writing a poem about the animal, and like by the end of the semester, just like the perspectives, everybody's perspective had changed completely, because when you spend that time just really mining something or someone for like all its qualities, it's that thing of like everything is everything. Like I think earlier, Seetal, you spoke about love and like how it's a connector and it's necessary in this translation work. And I think like when you spend so much time just like seeing the fullness of a thing or a person or a place, there's no way you can't like you can't see that you develop a love for it. That's just how things work, because like it like mirrors you and you appreciate that. So shout out to cactus, basically.
Shout out to cactus.
Yeah. I think we just have to form relationships towards other beings that are respectful, honestly.
Yeah.
And that respect can form care and love at some point, you know. But I think it really begins with respect, and that is only really formed on trust.
Yes.
So
yeah,
you
trust.
know,
I just
yeah.
Is there a kind of, so I have two questions really, because when you were saying, you know, form it with materials that are, what did you say? You said that are caring. They're kind of nice, and it made me remember that like materials as well. Like, you know how you meet some humans that you want to like make you feel safe, and some humans that don't make you feel safe. Same.
Yeah.
But some materials are not really here to make you feel safe. And I remember that there's this plant I have in my house that I've named Spite, and every time I water it, it makes my hand like it gives me this feeling that I've been cut. So now I just stand from a big distance and throw some water on it. And I'm like, I just, the reason I'm keeping you here, Spite, is because I just don't want them to say that I've killed a plant. But left to me, you'd be gone. So it's like we have a relationship of just distance. Like, and sometimes I feel bad for it as well, because I like, in a way, I've romanticized all greenery as peaceful and loving, but maybe some really aren't. So I think there's such a thin line between kind of like making this material something. It's like you're not trying to cover up the behavior of materials. What you're trying to do is expose us to like so many different options that we can see that we have a choice to accept and reject materials.
But I also think it's just we have to accept regardless whether we like it or not, or have a healthy relationship towards it. Because if we accept that it's a relationship which is not necessarily healthy, that's a form of acceptance. We're like, okay, this is not healthy for me. I accept it, but I'm not going to integrate it. It's not going to be integrated into my life in that way where I'm going to give it all of my attention.
Yeah.
And the distance, therefore, is necessary, you know?
Yes.
And I think for me, it's all about accepting differences. And that's with everything. Humans, plants, animals, you know, materials, everything. So it's just the fact that we are different. We can be, just because they're not similar to us doesn't mean that we reject them. It's
What material?
accepting that there's
I was just asking, what material right now that if like out of the ones you're encountering or you've been encountering recently, which one the most about your own capacity to accept difference?
That's a great question. I think it's plastic, honestly, at the moment, and has been for some time, I think, because it's totally bastardized. But it's a material that is so intelligent and offers us so much. And it's just pushed into a space where we're blaming the material for our behaviors, actually.
Yes. I was just, as you were talking, I was like, why do I see plastic as something dumb? I don't know why, but in my head, it's just something that's so like, because I see it so much in the trash. Maybe that's why.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, like every time you say plastic, I imagine a Nestle water bottle, like an empty Nestle water bottle.
Yeah, just like, on the side of the road, just messing
there.
things up.
Yes, but that's actually not what it is.
No, because it's not plastic's fault. It's us putting it there, right?
Yeah.
So why should plastic be blamed for our misbehaviors?
We keep running away from ourselves.
Well, we're not accountable people.
At all.
No, at all. It's the worst. Which is something that I'm working on, actually. I'm wanting to kind of develop a materials birth certificate, a materials passport, and a death
oh my God, Seetal.
And then a will also.
This is exactly.
Yes.
Wow.
This is exactly this is the anointing I want to tap into just from everything. Please. I feel like, this is also what we're aspiring to. It's like the metaphors. These are exercising in creating like useful, constructive metaphors.
Yes. An alternative world. It's not just like an alternative story or image. It's an alternative world, so that whatever you pull out of the world is already part of this. Like it's never. Even if you're telling a story just about the past, you have to understand that it belongs to a world. And I think that whatever energy you put into sustaining and making that world believable enough that we're interested in the story of the passports is like, it already in effect proves to people that they can actually put energy into building alternative worlds and like survive.
I like that reading of sustainability as not just like sustainability in terms of, we hear the word, like it's a buzzword at this point, climate change, sustainability, but also like, I like that you sustain in that sense. So it's also like sustaining narratives, sustaining world building, like, I think that's cool. And honestly,
I'm just saying, and I feel like sus is like a word for holding, like sustainability, suspension, like sustain. I think these are like the prefix is so much about like, and I just imagine a pillar, like being a pillar for something, and that's kind of like matter right now. It's like it's a pillar for this. Actually, I was going through your pictures and I was seeing all these, like I was going through your Instagram and I was seeing all these pictures of these different materials, and I just thought, I just heard them in my head being like, oh my God, we're so excited to be here.
That's so nice.
They were like, yeah, at least, somebody notices us. Like, we're actually doing a lot, guys. Thank God.
Yeah.
I feel like that's just like, this is the work that you're doing, Seetal. And like, I feel like it's getting to that point where we don't live in it's getting to a world where materials are not shook that people notice them, because we're just the harmony is just there. So it's like, do you understand? Like it's getting to a world where I'm not conceiving of plastic as just an empty Nestle bottle at the side of the road. It's like I'm fully in fellowship with all the things that I use and that I live with.
So you're saying that the world is becoming more aware of materials?
I'm saying that is the work that Seetal is doing, and that is the world that is being created by this work. And it's a matter of time before we get there. If this work
It's a matter of time.
There we go.
Wow, the heavens just opened.
I was mad. I didn't even hear
Beautiful.
that.
It is a matter of time. I think it's a matter, and I think it's a matter of time because time is the matter. Time is the matter.
Exactly.
And we really have to. I know time is the matter.
My name is
we have to, now. This podcast makes us realize we actually need names for all our other podcasts because time is the matter has to happen. I mean, because, and it's one of those things where time has to stay. Not has to, but there's a reason why it escapes that tangibility that plastic has or that tangibility that humans have, because like somebody has to do the work of like being ungraspable, because that's part of what keeps pushing our boundary of our imagination. Like you think you know time and then time goes and does something else and you're like, oh, time. Like you're so sneaky. I didn't know that I was capable. Didn't know. Even algae is probably surprising itself. Like shit, I did not know I could be. Or like seaweed. Seaweed is like, we're now snacks, guys.
Yeah.
Or like that indigo tree.
Yeah.
That only is that the it's not the indigo. It's the tree that you talk about that gives us its pigments, its dye in 10 years. I'm getting it wrong, but you know what I'm talking about.
Is it Palo Santos?
Yes, Palo Santos.
The smell that it's
the smell very good.
So do you know about the story of Palo Santos? Like how it comes from this tree and it has to die on its own. And only when it dies and then it now decides that it's ready to give off this smell is when if you kill it.
Exactly.
If you kill it before it's time to try and get the smell, you will never get it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there we go. That says everything, no?
Facts.
That they have agency.
Exactly. And I mean, we talk about animism in all of this, right? I think it just goes to show that they are beings in their own right.
Yes.
So, yeah, we just need to form healthy relationships towards them, honestly.
Heal the world.
I like you mentioning animism. Animism. Reminds me of what we were talking about earlier about formal versus informal, East versus West. This is like the binary, which obviously that binary is a very colonial construct. But I was just like, wow, we were actually animists out here like back in the day. And then just like whatever disregard we have for the materials around us are born from just like this place that we've gotten to now of like completely disregard like your animistic past or whatever is like bad and forget about that and like forget about this idol worshiping and like focus on the lights and
I think that's the thing about organized religion. Let me not speak for anything in particular. Let me not even cough and because I was about to throw shots at my people, but I'll meet you guys later. But organized religion, like I think what it is sometimes is that it poses as a solution and it doesn't allow alternatives. And then in fact goes on to challenge and demonize any alternative carrying alternatives. Because I feel like animism is an alternative that's carrying like a whole chest of alternatives. It's like you want wood, there's wood. You want steel, there's steel. You want water,
exactly,
go for it. But then this one is like ban thing that makes you think that anything else is even possible. And I think there's so much. It's funny that we call thinking like that a version of modernization. Like we call that civilization. And I think we do have to enter that realm of thinking of that as civilization so that we can learn from our mistakes and say, child, never again. Like this is not how to be civilized.
Do you know that in the Igbo worldview, everything has a chi? Like it's not just people, animals, like everything.
Yes. Like in the Yoruba worldview, how everything has an oriki, which is a praise song that is sung about the essence of any being. Like each element, each cloth, even fabric, whatever it is, it has an oriki. So I think we just have to stop trying to prove to people that we've been thinking ahead. We just have to do more to keep putting energy into what we're calling thinking ahead. Like we need to put more, like we need those passports. We need Indigo to have like bank accounts. I need to know what she exchanges. I'm curious.
Yeah. We'll get there. I mean, there's many things we're developing, including a materials horoscope. So there's a form of divination involved, and it's all really fun but also very informative. You're just really learning about yourself.
Yeah,
and that's all this is. This is our journey.
Yeah. I think that's a great way to close.
Yeah, I wish I could. I'm inserting that meme. We shall watch your journey with great interest, or your career. I don't know what the meme says, but I don't know if you know the meme, or this is just me.
No, it's just you. Okay. It's just you. That's who you are. Thank you so much, Seetal. Like this has made my morning. It's wonderful. I'm so grateful that you've made yourself present in our presence.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye. Eid Mubarak, everyone.
Eid Mubarak.